much, Joe, for spending time.
That's okay.
To come and speak to me. But, my first question is, firstly, why are you called the Crozier and the Pen?
Well, we wanted to take a reference out of a book or something like that. We weren't just going to make something up out of the blue. So I was reading Ulysses at the time by James Joyce, and there was a chapter in there where he had loads of different titles that I thought would be good for a band, and one of them was the Crozier and the Pen, and we thought it was pretty good.
Does literature, sort of the influence of literature, to kind of extend beyond the title in your band? Is there, more references to it in the music?
Well, I suppose lyrically, I take a lot of influence from literature, particularly in the songs. I'd incorporate stories from books that I've liked and moments in books that I've liked.
If you had to describe the Crozier and the Pen's music to someone, in what words would you do that?
In what words?
What words would you use to describe the sort of music that you produce?
Well, I suppose it's fundamentally folk music, or pop music. I suppose the fact that we've got a guitar and a violin makes it, and no drums or anything like that, makes it slightly different.
What was the choice? What's the decision behind having a guitar and a violin and vocals? Because it's not the most usual sort of combination of instruments, but it seems to work very well. So
I suppose we started playing music together, and they're both complementary to one another. We both like folk music.
Okay. What? Who would you expect to listen to your music? What would be your target audience, so to speak?
Well, it hasn't. The music hasn't been written specifically for a target audience. We wrote the music for friends and family and that sort of thing. So
it's quite a personal.
Yeah, there's not a commercial agenda in what we're doing, because we both have lives outside of it. It's just we do it because we enjoy it, and we like to share that with other people.
So in many ways, it's like pure music, sort of music stripped away from commercialism and.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's no motive behind it to make any money from it. Because and if there was, then it probably wouldn't sound like it does.
Yeah. Okay. Just for example, your track "Golden Hair" uses a poem by James Joyce. What made you decide to use that particular poem?
Well, I like that poem anyway. And a lot of musicians in the past have taken influence from James Joyce, notably like Syd Barrett, the Pogues, all people who I like and who I've tried to sound like, and so I chose to do that because I think James Joyce's poetry fits to music. I mean, it's taken from chamber music, a collection of poems that he wrote before he was that famous, and throughout chamber music is the central theme going through everything. Like there's particularly references to Dublin. Where music is of central importance, so he places music in the context of life and personifies things through that. and so, but the track Golden Hair has the poem Golden Hair is quite personal. I mean, it's got a very nice sentiment, I think, and also quite a deep longing for something.
How easy was it to compose music to this particular poem? So obviously you've got a poem that means something almost by itself. It must be quite hard to find music that will adequately sort of complement it.
Well, yeah. I suppose I didn't explicitly try and make the music necessarily complement it. And I don't even know if it does, really. But
I mean, would you say that the music that you've composed with it is equally of equal importance to the poem?
Oh no, I think the poem is much more important than the music.
So it's very much sort of subordinate, the music, to the poem.
Yeah, definitely. Although I did try and bring out. No, when you read the poem Golden Hair, there's like an urgency, but it always remains unpacified. Like he wants to go to the woman who's singing, and he leaves his book, he leaves his room, and he goes out, but it's never satisfied. And I wanted to convey that, I suppose, and I think it does sound quite. I think the music perhaps conveys a feeling of isolation that maybe mirrors the poem, but
but still keeping sort of the levels of the poem and the music below.
Yes,
sort of like
definitely.
a platform.
The poem is much more important.
Okay. I noticed that the violin wasn't present in that track. Was that an active decision?
Well, lyrically, the track's a lot softer than the others, and perhaps with that violin on it conveys that sparseness, like the bareness, like I was trying to say about the poem. So I think that poem's got a very, very specific way it makes you feel, and I think that it is more suited to being performed on a guitar without a violin. So yes, that was an active decision.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the track "The Old Oak Tree" comes across as a very personal song. What was the inspiration to write this track?
Well, I've always struggled in terms of writing about myself and writing about fictional things, and that's the only track that I've written where I really sort of strip down to my own life. I mean, it is entirely biographical. So it is a personal song.
So there aren't really any fictional elements in it. It's much more of a personal.
I'd have to think of the lyrics. Yeah, it's a personal.
What about Kevin when he's formulating his violin part around the lyrics? It seems to complement them very well. How does he go about sort of in rehearsals, sort of doing that?
Well, I'll begin by writing the song, and then Kevin just works around what I'm doing. I mean, he's a great violin player, and he's able to sort of work around what I'm singing or what I'm playing on the guitar, and I think we have quite a good relationship in that way.
Because it was very noticeable when watching you two perform that there was a lot of contact between you. So, does he take a lot of cues from you when doing the music, or is that just part of the fun of performing? Sort of the contacts and what the music that you're putting together.
Yeah, but there's varying degrees over how much we'll communicate over what we're doing. I mean, I think a huge part of playing music is just expressing what comes out. So if I begin playing something and he improvises, then I'd be perfectly happy for him to do that.
So it's lots of your music aleatorio, so to speak, different every time you perform it.
I would say so. I mean, we don't have. We're not bound to any specific versions of the songs.
Yeah. Okay. And the track Plums is very poetic regarding the lyrics used. Again, I want to know, is the lyrics of that song more important than the music itself? Because the music itself is actually reasonably repetitive.
Yeah, well, I don't think you have to overcomplicate what's being said in the music, particularly if you do take care of your lyrics like I do. I'm not sure how poetic they are. I mean, the only way in which they could be is that I'd make reference to a lot of different literature in that song.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so by keeping the music more simplistic, it does enable to place importance on the words. But also, I think it's about balance. I mean, if I keep the guitar really simple, then that frees up Kev on the violin to bring colour to the music, and then the lyrics on top of that.
I mean, would you say that sort of Kevin's violin part is more of an ornamental sort of aspect to the foundations of the work being your guitar and the lyrics?
Well, definitely. Definitely the guitar brings the foundation. Kev's guitar can work Kev's violin, sorry, can work in two ways, really. I mean, there are tracks when it holds down the sort of the rhythm, and then other times when it comes to the forefront. I mean, he's able to move in and out of doing that. For example, if I'm singing, he can tone down the violin, and then when I stop singing, he'll bring it back in. So I mean, it's very classical way of doing it.
Yeah.
Classical pop song writing.
No, I agree. So you're talking about sort of like Kevin making these decisions a lot of the time, sort of slip in and out of the melody and accompaniment. So when you're composing these songs right at the beginning, I mean, do you have a rough idea of how they're going to sound, what Kev's going to do to accompany them, or is it very much sort of you write the songs and you turn up and you start singing and you just see what he does, sort of
Yeah. Well, before I played with Kev, I wrote songs quite differently. So now I suppose I do tailor them to well, I have got in the back of my mind the fact that violin's going to go over the top of this, so and that brings out a lot more sort of, in terms of like the chords I use, a lot more standard chord progressions and stuff like that.
So you have altered him altered your music to sort of to fit Kev's.
Yeah, definitely.
To free him up.
Especially if you're playing with someone else, you've got to bear in mind that it's not only you that's going to be.
Well, I was going to say,
I think that's the most important.
I was going to say, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just wondering, do you always sort of agree over what you're going to do together, or is it sort of does it sometimes break down? Does he want to go off and do something wild and exotic on the violin, and not to your eyes not suitable?
Yeah. Well, when we were talking about recording this, I told him that I was only going to record the tracks that only had me on. So in that sense, I suppose we did disagree.
Yeah.
But no. Generally we've got the same sort of same sort of vision of what we want to do with the group.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. That will tie up for now. So thank you very much.
Cool. Cheers.
Cheers.